welcome to this first look exploring session, our continuing look at Every Man in His Humour by Ben Jonson. We spent a fair amount of time last time luxuriating in the world of Act 1 as we got a sense of the play, a sense of the characters, I think is the more important thing, as we dive into all these various different types of people and their lives and what their humours are, what their state of being is, what is their general centre of gravity as to the kind of person that they are. And every so often someone threw in hints of a plot. A sense that, there's some business going on that's going to get complex and busy, and things are going to go in all sorts of interesting ways. To continue our journey as we go into Act 2 and dip a little toe into Act 3 as well, we have reading Lorenzo Jr. today is...
I am Eric, and I am Every Man and the Juniors.
Reading Cobb today is...
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm based in Romford.
Reading Musco today is...
Hi, I'm Lois Potter in London.
Reading Lorenzo Sr. today is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, I'm a historian, and I'm in Hull.
Reading Prospero and Thorello today is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Bobadilla today is...
Briony Sparrow, actor in the East Midlands.
Reading Stephano and Piso today is...
Alan Scott, based in Suffolk in the UK.
And reading Matheo today is...
Hi, I'm Lynn, coming to you from the northwestern United States.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions and generally keeping everything moving in the right direction. Without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 2, Scene 1. And we have the appearance of Musco disguised like a soldier.
Splad, I cannot choose but laugh to see myself translated thus. From a poor creature to a creator. For now must I create an intolerable sort of lies, or else my profession loses its grace. And yet, the lie to a man of my coat is as ominous as the fico. Oh, sir, it holds for good policy to have that outwardly in vilest estimation that inwardly is most dear to us. So much for my borrowed shape. Well, the truth is, my master intends to follow his son dry foot to Florence this morning. Now, I, knowing of this conspiracy, and the rather to insinuate with my young master, for so must we that are blue waiters or men of service do, or else perhaps we may wear motley at the year's end, and who wears motley, you know. I've got me a 4 in this disguise, determining here to lie in ambuscado and intercept him in the midway, if I can but get his cloak, his purse, his hat, nay, anything, so I can stay his journey. Rex regum, I am made forever, of faith. Well, now must I practice to get the true garb of one of these lance knights. My arm here, and my young master and his cousin.
Enter Lorenzo Jr. and Stephano.
So, sir, and how then?
Godsfoot, I've lost my purse, I think.
How lost your purse? Where? When had you it?
I cannot tell. Stay.
Ed, I'm afraid they will know me. Would I could get by them.
What, have you it?
No, I think I was bewitched.
Nay, do not weep, pox on it. Hang it, let it go.
Oh, it's here. Man, had it been lost, I cared not, but for a jet ring Marina sent me.
A jet ring. Oh, the poesy, the poesy.
Fine, i' faith. Though fancy sleep, my love is deep. Meaning that though I did not fancy her, yet she loved me dearly.
Most excellent.
And then I sent her another, and my poesy was, the deeper, the sweeter. I'll be judged by St. Peter.
Yeah. How by St. Peter? I do not conceive that.
Marry St. Peter to make up the meter.
Well, you are beholding to that saint. He helped you at your need. Thank him, thank him.
I will venture, come what will. Gentlemen, please you'll change a few crowns for a very excellent good blade here. I'm a poor gentleman, a soldier, one that in the better state of my fortune scorned so mean a refuge, but now it's the humor of necessity to have it so. You seem to be gentlemen, well affected to martial men, else I should rather die with silence than live with shame. However, vouchsafe to remember, it is my want speaks, not myself. This condition agrees not with my spirit.
Where hast thou served?
Oh, may it please you, Signor, in all the provinces of Bohemia, Hungary, Dalmatia, Poland, where not? I've been a poor servitor by sea and land any time this 14 years, and followed the fortunes of the best commanders in Christendom. I was twice shot at the taking of Aleppo, once at the relief of Vienna. I've been at America in the galleys thrice, where I was most dangerously shot in the head, through both the thighs, and yet being thus maimed, I'm void of maintenance, nothing left me but my scars, the noted marks of my resolution.
How will you sell this rapier, friend?
Oh, faith, Signor, I refer it to your own judgment. You are a gentleman. Give me what you please.
True, I am a gentleman. I know that. But what though? I pray you say, what would you ask?
I assure you the blade may become the side of the best prince in Europe.
I with the velvet scabbard.
Nay, and be mine. It shall have a velvet scabbard that's flat, not where it is as 'tis. And you will give me an angel.
At your pleasure, Signor. Nay, it's a most pure Toledo.
I'd rather it was a Spaniard, but tell me, what shall I give you for it? And it had been a silver hilt.
Come, you shall not buy it. Hold, there's a shilling, friend. Take thy rapier.
Why, but I will buy it now, because you say so. Shall I go without a rapier?
You may buy one in the city.
I'll buy this, so I will. Tell me your lowest price.
You shall not, I say.
By God's lid, but I will, though I give more than 'tis worth.
Come away, you are a fool.
Friend, I'll have it for that word. Follow me.
At your service, Signor.
And they exit. Interesting bits and pieces here. I do quite like Stephano's logic for buying things. It's not so much the sword. It needs to be pretty. He wants the pretty things, and then the way you talk yourself round to insisting on buying things, and the logic of value and how all that works. There's some lovely bad jokes again that I still really love. I love the whole St. Peter bit. Just
Yes.
why did you mention St. Peter? Well, it makes it the line be the right length.
Yeah.
Many a poet's done that. Briony, then Alan, then Eric.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out he's on the same level as dogs or small children, where he doesn't really want the thing until somebody else says he can't have the thing, and then it's all he needs to have in his life.
Yeah. Alan.
I was just interested in the mention of America. Whether that's a typo for Armenia, which would make a bit more sense in terms of the area of operation, or whether this was just a let's make this totally nonsensical.
No, America is it's right.
Yeah.
It's perfectly at this time, 1598.
Also, if he went in the galleys, he'd be more likely to go to America than Armenia in a galley.
Yeah, I mean he's just peppering his speech with as many places as possible. I mean, he's been dangerously shot in the head and the thighs, which is presumably from different different guns. So, but,
Yeah.
I like that juxtaposition. Eric, then Lois, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I like the bit where Musco just goes, "Oh, you're a gentleman. Give me what you please," and then Stephano goes, as if he suddenly remembered that he's basically a gentleman, but he's not really a gentleman. True, I am a gentleman. And then I also enjoyed the "I'd rather it were a Spaniard" bit. It was most pure Toledo.
Yeah.
Lois.
Yeah. Yeah, that's meant to show how dumb he is. I think Stephano's behaving kind of like a tourist who, wants something because he's buying it in an interesting place from an interesting person. And, the fact that this, whatever it is incredibly crummy and is probably on sale as well in every Woolworths in town. That's not the point.
Yeah. Elizabeth.
I was just marveling at how many times Musco was shot, and still managed to survive. It's like this legend, this mythology of like being immortal, about being almost immortal. These people that are struck by lightning several times and that still survive. That's what Briony just put in the chat, 50 Cent. And that was what I was thinking of. How he was shot so many times. I thought, was that supposed to be as funny as it came across?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is because Musco is, at the beginning, he's talking about getting into his disguise and his costumes. So it's a question of how ridiculous Musco is in this performance of this figure. I mean, we can assume none of it is true, but it's the question of how it then plays out. Lynn, then Eric.
Yeah, like Elizabeth said, what are the chances that someone injured that many times would survive, even if the injury itself wasn't immediately fatal? Septic infection would take him a few days later. So, but what I was originally going to talk about is like the transaction over the sword. We do actually see kind of something sort of decent about Lorenzo Jr. Here's a little bit of money, keep your sword. That a soldier selling his sword is like, that's desperation. That's a last resort. And the fact that Stephano would just go ahead and buy it from him does not reflect well, again, on Stephano's character, that he would take advantage of this man's desperation. I mean, it's not true because Musco's faking, but it's not just, oh, I want that because someone else wants it. It's all of that. Plus, it's just like he's perfectly willing to take advantage of someone's dire distress.
Yeah.
Not very admirable.
Yeah, and again, yes, we're getting that very different levels that Lorenzo Jr. is working on to the people he's interacting with. Eric, then Helen.
Yeah, I had the impression that, like, at the beginning of this, that Musco was kind of going to con both of them, but then Lorenzo Jr. seems to be doing this reverse psychology thing with Stephano, and I was thinking at some point that Musco, like, that he put Musco up to this, but that doesn't really make sense if we believe what Musco said at the beginning of the scene. So there's a part of me going, are they both in on this? Because like we have seen in other plays where people do sort of monologues or soliloquies and are not telling the truth. So yeah,
I think we've just got a multiple cons working in slightly different directions. So it's layers of complexity, and again, in a sense that this is a sort of prelude scene of just bringing people together in different guises, without necessarily actually active action occurring. Helen.
So I assumed, I think now probably wrongly, that Lorenzo saw through the disguise, young Lorenzo, because after all, Musco is his servant. I mean, his father's servant, but I think I'm wrong there. But it was what I assumed.
I think we'll get more data on that later on, but it's a good question to be asking, actually. Of the performers do need to know: are they seeing through a disguise or not?
No, I think if he were, he'd say so. Though I mean, it's not that subtle.
No,
I think that and presumably brainworm. He's probably got a patch over one eye, his hat pulled down, all sorts of stuff.
And again, it's full of those hints at details that that speech of Musco ending effectively with a series of actions intimated about what he's getting into the rest of his costume, and then fretting that he's not quite ready yet. when the other people have entered, and will they turn around and see him when he's ready? And you almost expect, in the nick of time, he's able to turn around and go, ha ha, and go ridiculously over the top. But that's a performer's choice. We need to move on. Hold on to any additional thoughts you have. We'll dive into Act 2, Scene 2, as we are reintroduced. It's been a little while since we, I think, bumped into them last. Lorenzo Senior.
My labouring spirit, being late oppressed with my son's folly, can embrace no rest, till it hath plotted by advice and skill how to reduce him from affected will to reason's manage. Which, while I intend, my troubled soul begins to apprehend a further secret, and to meditate upon the difference of man's estate, where is deciphered to true judgment's eye a deep, concealed, and precious mystery. Yet can I not but worthily admire at nature's art, who, when she did inspire this heat of life, placed reason as a king here in the head, to have the marshalling of our affections, and with sovereignty to sway the state of our weak empery. But as in divers commonwealths we see the form of government to disagree, even so in man, who searcheth soon, shall find as much or more variety in mind. Some men's affections, like a sullen wife, is with her husband reason still at strife. Others, like proud arch-traitors that rebel against their sovereign, practice to expel their liege, Lord Reason, and not shame to tread upon his holy and anointed head. But as that land or nation best doth thrive, which to smooth-faced peace is most proclive, so doth that mind, whose fair affections ranged by reason's rules, stand constant and unchanged. Else, if the power of reason be not such, why do we attribute to him so much? Or why are we obsequious to his law, if he wants spirit our effects to awe? Oh no, I argue weakly, he is strong, albeit my son hath done him too much wrong.
Enter Musco.
Oh, my master. Nay, faith, have at you. I'm fleshed now, I've sped so well. Gentlemen, I beseech you, respect the estate of a poor soldier. I am ashamed of this base course of life. God's my comfort, but extremity provokes me to it. What remedy?
I have not for you now.
By the faith I bear unto God, gentlemen, it is no ordinary custom, but only to preserve manhood. I protest to you, a man I have been, a man I may be, by your sweet bounty.
I pray thee, good friend, be satisfied.
Good signor, by Jesu, you may do the part of a kind gentleman in lending a poor soldier the price of 2 cans of beer, a matter of small value. The King of Heaven shall pay you, and I shall rest thankful. Sweet signor.
Nay, and you be so importunate.
Oh, sir, oh, Lord, sir, need will have his course. I was not made to this vile use. Well, the edge of the enemy could not have abated me so much. It's hard when a man hath served in his prince's cause and be thus. Signor, let me derive a small piece of silver from you. It shall not be given in the course of time. By this good ground, I was fain upon my rapier last night for a poor supper. I am a pagan else, sweet signor.
Believe me, I am rapt with admiration to think a man of thy exterior presence should, in the constitution of the mind, be so degenerate, infirm, and base. Art thou a man, and shamest thou not to beg, to practice such a servile kind of life? Why were thy education ne'er so mean? Having thy limbs, 1,000 fairer courses offer themselves to thy election. Nay, there the wars might still supply thy wants, or service of some virtuous gentleman, or honest labour. Nay, what can I name but would become thee better than to beg? But men of your condition feed on sloth, as doth the scarab on the dung she breeds in, not caring how the temper of your spirits is eaten with the rust of idleness. Now, afore God, whate'er he be that should relieve a person of thy quality, while you insist on this loose, desperate course, I would esteem the sin not thine, but his.
Faith, signor, I would gladly find some other course, if so.
Aye, you'd gladly find it, but you will not seek it.
Alas, sir, where should a man seek? In the wars, there's no ascent by desert in these days, and for service, would it were as soon purchased as wished for. God's my comfort, I know what I would say.
What's thy name?
Please you, Portentio.
Hortensio. Say that a man should entertain thee now. Wouldst thou be honest, humble, just, and true?
Oh, signor, by the place and honour of a soldier.
Nay, nay, I like not those affected oaths. Speak plainly, man. What thinkst thou of my words?
Nothing, signor, but wish my fortunes were as happy as my service should be honest.
Well, follow me. I'll prove thee, if thy deeds will carry a proportion to thy words.
And exit Lorenzo Senior.
Yes, sir, straight. I'll but to garter my hose. That my belly were hooped now, for I'm ready to burst with laughing. Slid, was there ever seen a fox in years to betray himself thus? Now shall I be possessed of all his determinations, and consequently my young master. Well, he is resolved to prove my honesty, faith, and I am resolved to prove his patience. Oh, I shall abuse him intolerably. This small piece of service will bring him clean out of love with the soldier forever. It's no matter. Let the world think me a bad counterfeit if I cannot give him the slip at an instant. Why, this is better than to have stayed his journey by half. Well, I'll follow him. Oh, how I long to be employed.
And exit Musco. This scene is doing some interesting work. We get Lorenzo Senior's sort of opening oration, which is sort of an interesting little treatise. Partly there just simply to cover the fact that Musco's just exited and it has to re-enter again with a reasonable gap between the two. But also we get this sort of this moment Lorenzo sort of being sort of quite get a job-ish. Just go go and get some work. Don't beg. Where we sort of certainly in a modern context we sort of turn against him a bit. But then he does actually at least offer something in terms of service. So he's not being a complete sod. So there's interesting give and take going on here, and of course what is Musco's game here as well. He's playing an interesting, dangerous game for reasons. I'm not sure what the reasons are, but there are reasons. Anyone want to elucidate on that? Why are these things happening? Lois?
Yeah, well, I think the reason is what Helen gave last time, actually, which is that it's more in his interest to be in the favor of young Lorenzo, who will eventually be his master. I mean, he says that, in fact, in his opening speech, that, if you don't do that sort of thing, you end up wearing motley. And, as he says, who wears motley, In other words, he'd be a fool if he didn't go with the rising sun rather than the setting sun.
But Lynn?
Yeah, but he also does not reveal himself to Lorenzo Jr. He runs into Lorenzo Jr. first and says, I fooled him. So yeah, it's not part of a conspiracy between Jr. and Musco. So he is sort of acting as his own agent, which I guess makes him kind of more fun and interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to say is, like, you're looking for places to cut in this big guy. Yeah, that long didactic speech at the beginning of this scene, we could do with about 80% of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the audience is raring to hear about Lord Reason. I mean, that's what I paid my penny on the door for.
Yeah,
Helen,
I sprained my eyeballs, rolling my eyes.
Helen, then Briony, then Alan.
Yes, I'm sorry that I failed to bring that speech over to you. However, while speaking it, I was thinking to myself, this is a very long speech, very much a treatise, all about all the theory of reason and all the rest of it, and there isn't a quotable line in it. I mean, it's really amazing that you get a speech full of profound thought, and it's just completely without merit of any sort.
Before I go back to what I've just said, the ordering, anyone want to push back on that or elucidate? I'll go to Lois briefly before I go back to Briony and that one.
Well, I'm not going to do a comparative study of the two versions all the way through, but I do remember that this is one speech that he changed completely in the rewrite. It all goes in a completely different direction, and it's much cleverer. So he probably thought it was terrible too.
So maybe when I was saying, this is sort of just padding to split the two units of action apart, and maybe someone noticed and said, could you do another draft on that, Briony?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Lorenzo Senior's narrative is actually quite modern and still very relevant. It took me right back to being behind a bar listening to blue collar Sun readers telling me about how, if you haven't got a job, it's just because you're not trying hard enough and nobody needs any help. They're just sponges, blah, blah, blah. I just thought it really still rings true to a lot of people today.
Yeah, I mean, that conversation with Musco is just that speech. I did just put it in the chat, and I said it just now. Just get a job. Is just going. There's no consideration for context or circumstance. We're in a narrative of deserving and undeserving poor here, and it still appears. Alan,
I must admit, I understand why Lynn's saying that will be a candidate for cut, but I think it's actually being quite revealing in terms of the character of Lorenzo Senior. That he is basically a pompous pain in the what's it. And it is establishing that even more definitively as part of his character.
But there's always a balancing act between being pompous and being boring. How many lines is required to get that across to the audience? We could stick with it. Let's maybe we should workshop it. Helen, then Eric.
Let's not workshop it. What Musco is doing is he's now employed twice by Lorenzo the father. So, but the reason he's now employed by him twice is that Musco, in his own person, has been left behind. And he wants to be actually present in order to be of service to Lorenzo Jr. So this is why if Lorenzo Sr. had brought Musco along with him as his traveling servant, then this would not be happening.
Eric?
I was just going to say that Nomaticus would disagree with your assessment of that speech. That would be too short for Nomaticus. He'd just go sort of, this is not compendious enough. Let me write another 10 pages.
Eric is referencing The Glass of Government, a very short play. Rachael.
Short enough.
No, I was going to bring, I wasn't going to bring that up, but this Lorenzo speech does remind me of that. And I think that he's talking in verse, and we had some of that stuff that was, knocking, not necessarily verse writing, but the way that people write verse when they're just filling stuff in. I wonder, if Lorenzo in the scene speaking in verse is meant to be I don't know, that he's making this grand speech, but it's that he's talking to his son and he's talking down to him, and or not talking to his son, but that he's making this big thing about the poor that deserve things and the poor that don't. I think there's some tongue-in-cheekness there, and it's meant to seem like he's a blowhard to the audience in this, if that makes sense.
Yes, I mean, for the viewers at home, that it's absolutely right that Lorenzo Senior is written in blank verse, whereas for most of this scene, certainly when he does any speechifying,
heavily rhymed verse.
Yeah.
That's rhyme. Yeah.
Nothing blank about it at all, I'm afraid.
Oh, is it? Sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's rhymed,
Yeah.
isn't it? So it's very formal, as opposed to this prose, which is doing very different work.
Sententious. I mean, sententious lines often are in rhyme.
So
That's
Except
moralistic.
except that the meaning wasn't end stopped, so you've got to make all sorts of choices about how much you let the rhyme through.
Right.
Anyway, we should move on. Lots of food for
I
thought.
agree.
Let's go into Act 2, Scene 3, as we meet Prospero. We've heard so much about in Act 1. Also in attendance, we have Bobadilla and Matheo.
Yes, faith, sir. We were at your lodging to seek you, too.
Oh, I came not there tonight.
Your brother delivered us as much.
Who, Giuliano?
Giuliano, Signor Prospero, I know not in what kind you value me, but let me tell you this, as sure as God, I do hold it so much out of mine honour and reputation, if I should but cast the least regard upon such a dunghill of flesh, I protest to you, as I have a soul to be saved, I ne'er saw any gentleman-like part in him, and there were no more men living upon the face of the earth, I should not fancy him, by Phoebus.
Troth, nor I. He's of a rustical cut. I know not how. He doth not carry himself like a gentleman.
Oh, Signor Matheo, that's a grace peculiar but to a few. Quos aequas amavit Jupiter.
I understand you, sir.
Enter Lorenzo Jr. and Stephano.
No question you do, sir. Lorenzo, now on my soul, welcome. How dost thou, sweet rascal, my genius? 'Sblood, I shall love Apollo and the mad Thespian girls, the better while I live for this. My dear villain, now I see there's some spirit in thee. Sirrah, these be they two I writ to thee of. Nay, what a drowsy humour is this now? Why dost thou not speak?
Oh, you are a fine gallant. You sent me a rare letter.
Why, was't not rare?
Yes, I'll be sworn I was near guilty of reading the like. Match it all in Pliny's familiar epistles, and I'll have my judgment burned in the ear for a rogue. Make much of thy vein, for it is inimitable. But I marvel what camel it was that had the carriage of it, for doubtless he was no ordinary beast that brought it.
Why?
Why, sayest thou? Why dost thou think that any reasonable creature, especially in the morning, the sober time of the day too, would have taken my father for me?
Blood, you jest, I hope?
Indeed, the best use we can turn it to is to make a jest on it now. But I'll assure you, my father had the proving of your copy some hour before I saw it.
What a dull slave was this? But, sirrah, what said he to it, i'faith?
Nay, I know not what he said, but I have a shrewd guess what he thought.
What? What?
Marry, that thou art a damned dissolute villain, and I some grain or two better in keeping thee company.
That thought is like the moon in the last quarter, 'twill change shortly. But, sirrah, I pray thee be acquainted with my two zanies here. Thou wilt take exceeding pleasure in them if thou hearst them once. But what strange piece of silence is this? The sign of the dumb man?
Oh, sir, a kinsman of mine, one that may make our music the fuller. And he please he hath his humour, sir.
Oh, what is't? What is't?
Nay, I'll neither do thy judgment nor his folly that wrong as to prepare thy apprehension. I'll leave him to the mercy of the time, if you can pick him. So.
Well, Signor Dilla, Signor Matheo, I pray you know this gentleman here. He is a friend of mine and one that will well deserve your affection. I know not your name, Signor, but I shall be glad of any good occasion to be more familiar with you.
My name is Signor Stephano, sir. I am this gentleman's cousin, sir. His father is my uncle, sir. I am somewhat melancholy, but you shall command me, sir, in whatsoever is incident to a gentleman.
Signor, I must tell you this. I am no general man. Embrace it as a most high favour, for, by the host of Egypt, but that I conceive you to be a gentleman of some parts, I love few words. You have wit. Imagine.
Aye, truly, sir. I am mightily given to melancholy.
Oh, Lord, sir, it is your only best humour, sir. Your true melancholy breathes your perfect fine wit, sir. I am melancholy myself divers times, sir, and then I do no more but take your pen and paper presently and write you your half score or your dozen of sonnets in a sitting.
One second. Sorry, I lost my place in the script. Is it scrolled up? Okay.
If Faith, I think, is that the one?
No, mass.
Mass.
Then he utters them by the gross.
Mass, then he utters them by the gross.
Truly, sir, and I love such things out of measure.
If faith as well as in measure.
Why, I pray you, Signor, make use of my study. It's at your service.
I thank you, sir. I shall be bold, I warrant you. Have you a close stool there?
Faith, sir, I have some papers there, toys of mine toys of mine own doing at idle hours, that you'll say there's some sparks of wit in them when you shall see them.
Would they were kindled once, and a good fire made, I might see self-love burned for her heresy.
Cousin, is it well? Am I melancholy enough?
Oh, aye, excellent.
Signor Bobadilla, what muse you so?
He is melancholy too.
Faith, sir, I was thinking of a most honourable piece of service was performed tomorrow, being St. Mark's Day, shall be some 10 years.
In what place was that service, I pray you, sir?
Why, at the beleaguering of Giboletto, where in less than 2 hours 700 resolute gentlemen, as anywhere in Europe, lost their lives upon the breach. I'll tell you, gentlemen, it was the first but the best leaguer that ever I beheld with these eyes, except the taking of Tortosa last year by the Genoese, but that, of all other, was the most fatal and dangerous exploit that ever I was ranged in, since I first bore arms before the face of the enemy, as I am a gentleman and a soldier.
So I had as leap as an angel. I could swear as well as that, gentleman.
And you were a servitor at both, it seems.
Oh, Lord, sir, by Phaeton, I was the first man that entered the breach, and had I not effected it with resolution, I had been slain if I had had 1,000,000 of lives.
Indeed, sir.
Nay, and you heard him discourse, you would say, so, how like you him?
I assure you, upon my salvation, 'tis true, and yourself shall confess.
You must bring him to the rack first.
Observe me judicially, sweet signor. They had planted me in a demi-culverin just in the mouth of the breach. Now, sir, as we were to ascend, their master gunner, a man of no mean skill and courage, you must think, confronts me with his linstock ready to give fire. I, spying his intendment, discharged my patronal in his bosom, and with this instrument my poor rapier ran violently upon the Moors that guarded the ordnance, and put them pell-mell to the sword.
To the sword, to the rapier, signor.
Oh, that was a good figure observed, sir. But did you all this, Signor, without hurting your blade?
Without any impeach on the earth, you shall perceive, sir, it is the most fortunate weapon that ever rid on a poor gentleman's thigh. Shall I tell you, sir? You talk of Morglay, Excalibur, Durindana, or so, tut. I lend no credit to that is reported of them. I know the virtue of mine own, and therefore I dare the boldlier maintain it.
I marvel whether it be a Toledo or no.
A most perfect Toledo, I assure you, Signor.
I have a countryman of his here.
Pray you, let's see, sir. Oh, yes, faith it is.
Is this a Toledo? Pish.
Why do you pish, Signor?
A Fleming, by Phoebus. I'll buy them for a guilder apiece, and I'll have 1,000 of them.
How say you, cousin? I told you this much.
Where bought you it, Signor?
Scurvy, rough soldier. Pox a god on him. He swore it was a Toledo.
A Provence rapier, no better.
Mass, I think it be indeed.
Tut, now it's too late to look on it. Put it up, put it up.
Well, I will not put it up. But by God's foot, if ever I meet him...
It's past remedy now, sir. You must have patience.
Horse and coney-catching rascal. Oh, I could eat the very hilts for anger.
A sign you have a good ostrich stomach, cousin.
Stomach. Would I had him here, you should have seen I had a stomach.
It's better as 'tis. Come, gentlemen, shall we go?
A miracle, cousin. Look here, look here.
And enter Musco.
Oh, God's lid, by your leave. Do you know me, sir?
Aye, sir, I know you by sight.
You sold me our rapier, did you not?
Yes, marry, did I, sir?
You said it was a Toledo, huh?
True, I did.
But it is none.
No, sir, I confess it is none.
Gentlemen, bear witness. He has confessed it. By God's lid, and you had not confessed it?
Oh, cousin, forbear, forbear.
Nay, I have done, cousin.
Why, you have done like a gentleman. He has confessed it. What would you more?
Sir, how dost thou like him?
Oh, it's a precious good fool. Make much on him. I can compare him to nothing more happily than a barber's virginals, for everyone may play upon him.
Gentlemen, shall I entreat a word with you?
With all my heart, sir. You have not another Toledo to sell, have you?
You are pleasant. Your name is Signor Lorenzo, as I take it.
You are in the right, but he means to catechize me, I think.
No, sir, I leave that to the curate. I am none of that coat.
And yet of as bare a coat. Well, say, sir.
Faith, Signor, I am but servant to God Mars extraordinary. And indeed, this brass varnish being washed off and 3 or 4 other tricks.
It's going to be one of those sessions. I can just tell, popping in and out. It was quite an important plot point. It was just about to happen.
Always the way.
Tell you what, let's discuss the scene and we'll finish it off. Hopefully, Lois will return. So the sword has returned, and Musco has returned, and all of those interesting things have reached some kind of a payoff. We have more good Stephano business of just getting really royally sort of made fun of because of his purchase. I love the moment when Lorenzo basically says, "I told you so." It's just really nice and things. Lois, you're back with us.
Yes, I'm back. This thing keeps going off. I mean, it's telling me that my link isn't secure. I don't know. Anyway, are we still there?
Yeah, we are still here. We paused. I briefly did some exposition. We will continue. I think we'll finish the scene and then we'll have a proper discussion. So could you go from Faith Signor again from the top of that speech?
Okay. Yeah. Faith, Signor, I am but servant to God Mars extraordinary. And indeed, this brass varnish being washed off and 3 or 4 other trips sublated, I appear yours in reversion after the decease of your good father, Musco.
Musco's blood, what wind hath blown what wind hath blown thee hither in this shape?
Your Easter, sir, the same that blew your father hither.
My father?
Nay, never start, it's true. He's come of town, of purpose to seek you.
Sir Prospero, what shall we do, sir? My father is come to the city.
My father, where is he?
At a gentleman's house yonder, by St. Anthony's, where he but stays my return, and then...
Who's this? Musco?
The same, sir.
Why? How comest thou transmuted thus?
Faith, a device. Nay, for the love of God, stand not here, gentlemen. House yourselves, and I'll tell you all.
But art thou sure he will stay thy return?
Do I live, sir? What a question is that?
Well, we'll prorogue his expectation a little. Musco, thou shalt go with us. Come on. Gentlemen, nay, I pray thee, good rascal, trip not. 'Tis hard. And our wits be so gouty that one old plodding brain can outstripe us all. Lord, I beseech thee, may that they lie and starve in some miserable spittle where they may never see the face of any true spirit again, but he perpetually haunted with some churchyard hobgoblin in seculo seculorum.
Amen. Amen.
And they exit. So yeah, it's a busy scene. Lots of character stuff again. We have explicitly bringing up that question of humours, discussing melancholy humour at length. Stefano, am I melancholy enough? Is my melancholy showing to its best? So there's lots of really nice detail in there, and then as I was saying earlier about the sword returning and being a route into discovering Musco as himself to his young master. A moment there, this brass varnish, which suggests that part of his disguise was sort of tanning up. I'm hoping it's only tanning up, because that could be really problematic. Yeah, his disguise was more elaborate than just a bit of costuming. There's a make-upping trick perhaps going on there as well. That seems to be
Unless
hinted.
he's got a bit of armor or something.
Yeah, it's just the ways that are being washed off. It just suggested that maybe he's put a bit of slap on or something. But anyway, that's something that could be massaged in production in a way that would be fine. Lynn, then Alan.
I wanted to go all the way back to the beginning of this scene, which is really quite fun in a sort of nasty way, where Prospero and Lorenzo Jr. are kind of talking in code to each other. These are the 2 guys I told you about. And the 2 guys are thinking, oh, he's talking us up because we're his friends. And actually, what he said in the letter is like, these guys are morons. It's hilarious. Come and meet them. And Lorenzo does something similar, like, oh, this guy is some kind of metaphor about he's going to add to our musical ensemble. But the subtext of it is like, yeah, this is my idiot cousin. He's hilarious. Just wait. So there's this sort of 2-layered conversation going on between the 2 smarter characters that the less on top of it characters can't really interpret properly. That could be very fun to play.
Yeah, I mean we've been talking about Prospero for a while. We now meet Prospero, so that's the question of what are our first impressions of him in this scene. But I don't know whether Alan's going to go on that point or have another thought.
No, the thought I got was that I'm finding there's an interesting counterpoint going on between Musco and Bobadilla. Musco, who's put on this personage of being the soldier down on his luck and telling tall tales about it, and Bobadilla, who seems to be doing a fairly similar thing, possibly with slightly more justification.
Yeah, it's a really. I had a note there as well. That they are doing very similar jobs, and is Bobadilla speaking the truth, or is he speaking a version of the truth that he's exaggerated slightly? Because it's quite important to have a line on what's going on there.
I suspect there are advantages in the retelling.
But it's a really nice contrast, and gives us options as to where we go with that. Rachael, you were waving. I think you were Prospero. How are you finding Prospero?
Well, he's interesting. But my thing that I wanted to say is just how much this scene reminds me of Marston, but how Jonson has some sort of subtler bitterness to him with the way this scene went. That the ending with the amen, amen. I don't know if those mystery cycles would be still available for people to read, or if Jonson could have read something like that, but it seems very ironic, or very tongue-in-cheek about religious stuff.
Well, there's a whole complex backstory about Jonson and his relationship with religion, which we won't go into. But absolutely, that he is working around various conventions there. I'll go to Lois, then Eric. Or shall I go to Eric, then Lois? I'll go to Eric first.
I was just going to mention it's very reminiscent of the plot of Le Dîner des Cons, which basically means the dinner of fools, where every few weeks, two smartasses have to bring in their own fools to a dinner, and basically make fun of them in the same way basically as Prospero and Lorenzo Jr. do. But there's a part of me going here. Jonson is dropping the possibility that they might get payback for it, as in in a sort of justified justice world kind of thing. They would be punished appropriately for this crime, preying on people who are less, less fortunate or less intellectually developed, or whatever, whatever you want to call it, or just fools. And sort of, there's a part of me going, but Jonson is known for his vitriol, so I don't know if that's actually going to work out.
There is a real question, about these are not kind acts. There is a cruelty going on here, and where you pitch that in tone, and where the play pitches these characters, for entertainment purposes, and what we think of that. Lois.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You may have said some of this while I was cut off again, but I think the whole scene is Prospero and Lorenzo in asides to each other, having a wonderful time, making fun of the other characters. And then at the end, in a huddle with Musco, who reveals himself only first to Lorenzo and then to Prospero. And I mean, it's one of those things where I imagine in a full sort of edited text, they would explain this. But so I think I don't know. My impression is that you're meant to find this all. You're meant to be identifying with them against these idiots. But that idea of the dinner of fools, I hadn't known about, and that seems very interesting. I wonder if there wasn't such a tradition of everybody just bringing the biggest fool they can find.
Now, I'll go to Helen.
Yes, the footnote monkeys will have a great deal of fun with what Bobadilla says, because I've no doubt that there is relevance to be had from some of these actions that he's claiming took place and that he took a major part in. I think they're all intended to be recent. And I think that the audience may very well know that there are possibilities, there are impossibilities. The audience will have a lot more information about them than is available to us, unless we have somebody's learned footnote.
Well, yes. I mean, that's where when we get to second looks of actually figuring out a line on some of these things comes in, because I think we do need a clear line as to what Bobadilla is talking about, because I think his is the one that probably is accurate. but maybe exaggerated, and the actor needs to know whether they're telling the truth or not, and that's quite important. Briony.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just going to say. It was a really hard one to pitch for me because he starts off, they're all talking about whether they're sad enough, and he sort of starts off with what seems fairly genuine, this memory of something, that he saw 10 years ago at war, but then it does seem like he is definitely exaggerating, bragging it up a bit. So yeah, it was a hard one to know how to land that scene.
Because of course, because and how in on this situation is Bobadilla. We're fairly sure that Lorenzo Jr. and Prospero are in on the game, but where is Bobadilla sitting within this circle of people? Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say, I guess other people have said it, but just that how so much rank is flouted in this play, like Stephano yesterday saying that if Lorenzo dies, he's the heir, and then you have Musco, who's in this little game that Prospero and Lorenzo are playing, are on their side, even though he's the servant, and there's that changing of rank, and even how Lorenzo Senior is seems a little foolhardy because he's so, not Bible thumping, but like sort of by the book, old fashioned guy, seeming super conservative, that there's some mocking towards that. And there's so much upbraiding that all these characters do to one another.
Lois, we lost you. Did you want to? Do you have anything additional? You're muted at present. Then we'll go to Elizabeth and Eric, and then we will move on.
It's really odd. Every time it comes back, it also comes back with me muted. But yeah, it's gone off several times. I mean, I may just have to drop out of this if it keeps happening, because it's maddening. It seems to have something to do with my. It keeps telling me I should get a different one, but I can't really do that in the middle of this.
Well, anyway.
Anyway, I think, I'm not even sure, this may have been said. God, what was I going to say? Oh, never mind. It was probably rubbish anyway.
You were talking about the Dinner of Fools.
Yeah, I was. But that was something that arose out of what you. Oh, yeah. Well, I think you're all being a bit hard on Lorenzo Sr., actually. I mean, for him to hire as his temporary servant, somebody that's acting as a beggar. I mean, how many people would actually do? And somebody whose stories he only vaguely believes. I mean, clearly, because they're. I mean, the stuff that Musco says to Lorenzo Senior isn't as preposterous as what he was saying to the other two, but still, no, I think Lorenzo Senior. I mean, obviously, all old men are stuffy and are meant to be deceived and so on, but still. I think it's a kinder treatment of him.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, just speaking to what Lois is talking about. First of all, I actually quite like Lorenzo Senior's long speeches. I think that there's a dryness to him and a wit to him that I quite like. I actually quite enjoyed them. But I was thinking about the text structurally. Just comparing Act 1 to Act 2, because we've completed Act 2 now, and we did Act 1 yesterday. And Act 1 kind of was very fast, like a fast-moving juggernaut. Was described as like a freight train. I feel like the pace has slowed down a lot in Act 2, and that we haven't got this flurry of action anymore, but more talk, more dialogue than we had before. Not necessarily more than we had before, but we've got more dialogue-driven scenes than we had before, when we had more action-driven scenes. And I just wanted to make a note of the change in pace from Act 2 to Act 1.
Well, I think also there are probably more performance options as well than we've actually discussed, that might level that out a bit. I think the thing is we keep wanting a plot to happen, and the thing is a plot get mentioned every so often, but it still doesn't fire. There's no impetus occurring. So it's like in Act 1, maybe it's more that we're sort of going, oh, it's just getting into its stride. It'll pick up pace, and then it's just continuing. And that it needed to get faster. I mean, the Bobadilla's little sequence, I feel like he should be acting out his fight and his approach, and that there's actually something really active going on there. And again, with Stephano, there's this constant scrappy-do quality of hold him back, because even though he's always never going to actually attack anyone. So yeah, there's all sorts of questions about pace throughout all of this, because there's a lot of stuff, and how do you keep the audience engaged with it when there isn't a drive to the narrative yet? Eric?
I was going to say that it's as sort of we're talking about pace and Act 1, Act 2 and all that stuff. The Act 2 is a lot shorter than Act 1, comparatively. Like Act 1 has like 4 scenes or something, and this one has just 2 scenes or 3. And they're very quick by comparison, I think.
And also, maybe the nature of the actual act divisions are relatively artificial in terms of how an audience would perceive it anyway. So I don't know how structural they are yet until we get further. But let us get further, because we have 2 more scenes to do this session, and we've had a jolly good natter. Hopefully the internet gods will be on our side as we go into Act 3, Scene 1. Enter Thorello and Piso.
He will expect you, sir, within this half hour.
Why? What's the clock?
News stricken 10.
Hath he the money ready? Can you tell?
Yes, sir. Baptista brought it yesterday night.
Oh, that's well. Fetch me my cloak.
And exit Piso.
Stay. Let me see. An hour to go and come. Aye. That will be the least, and then 'twill be an hour before I can dispatch with him, or very near. Well, I will say 2 hours. 2 hours. Things never dreamt of yet. May be contrived, aye, and affected too, in 2 hours' absence. Well, I will not go. 2 hours, no fleering opportunity. I will not give your treachery that scope. Who will not judge him worthy to be robbed, that sets his doors wide open to a thief, and shows the felon where his treasure lies? Again, what earthy spirit but will attempt to taste the fruit of beauty's golden tree, when a leaden sleep seals up the dragon's eyes? Oh, beauty is a project of some power, chiefly when opportunity attends her. She will infuse true motion in a stone, put glowing fire in an icy soul, stuff peasants' bosoms with proud Caesar's spleen, pour rich device into an empty brain, bring youth to folly's gate, there train him in, and after all, extenuate his sin. Well, I will not go. I am resolved for that. Go, carry it again, yet stay, yet do too. I will defer it till some other time.
Re-enter Piso.
Sir, Signor Platano will meet you there with the bond.
That's true, by Jesu. I had clean forgot it. I must go. What's o'clock?
Past 10, sir.
Heart. Then will Prospero presently be here too, with one or other of his loose consorts. I am a Jew if I know what to say, what course to take, or which way to resolve. My brain, methinks, is like an hourglass, and my imagination's like the sands, run dribbling forth to fill the mouth of time, still changed with turning in the ventricle. What were I best to do? It shall be so. Nay, I dare build upon his secrecy. Piso.
Sir?
Yet know I have bethought me too. I will not. Is Cobb within?
I think he be, sir.
But he'll prate too. There's no talk of him. No, there were no course upon the earth to this, if I durst trust him, tut I were secure. But there's the question now, if he should prove. Rimarum plenus thens, blood, I were rooked. The state that he hath stood in till this present doth promise no such change. What should I fear then? Well, come what will, I'll tempt my fortune once. Piso, thou mayst deceive me, but I think thou lovest me, Piso.
Sir, if a servant's zeal and humble duty may be termed love, you are possessed of it.
I have a matter to impart to thee, but thou must be secret, Piso.
Sir, for that.
Nay, hear me, man. Think I esteem thee well, to let thee in thus to my private thoughts. Piso, it is a thing sits nearer to my crest than thou art ware of. If thou shouldst reveal it.
Reveal it, sir?
Nay, I do not think thou wouldst, but if thou shouldst, then I
Sir.
think.
Sir, then I were a villain, disclaiming me forever if I do.
He will not swear. He has some meaning, sure. Else, being urged so much, how should he choose but lend an oath to all this protestation? He is no Puritan, that I am certain of. What should I think of it? Urge him again, and in some other form I will do so. Well, Piso, thou hast sworn not to disclose. You did swear?
Not yet, sir, but I will, so please you.
Nay, I dare take thy word. But if thou wilt swear, do as you think good. I am resolved without such circumstance.
By my soul's safety, sir, I here protest. My tongue shall ne'er take knowledge of a word delivered me in compass of your trust.
Enough, enough. These ceremonies need not. I know thy faith to be as firm as brass. Piso, come hither. Nay, we must be close in managing these actions. So it is. Now he has sworn I dare the safelier speak. I have of late by divers observations, but whether his oath be lawful, yea or no. I will ask counsel ere I do proceed. Piso, it will be now too long to stay. We'll spy some fitter time soon or tomorrow.
At your pleasure, sir.
I pray you search the books 'gainst I return, for the receipts twixt me and Platano.
I will, sir.
And hear you, if my brother Prospero chance to bring hither any gentleman, ere I come back, let one straight bring me word.
Very well, sir.
Forget it not, nor be not you out of the way.
I will not, sir.
Or whether he come or no, if any other, stranger or else, fail not to send me word.
Yes, sir.
Have care, I pray you, and remember it.
I warrant you, sir.
But Piso, this is not the secret I told thee of.
No, sir, I suppose so.
Nay, believe me, it is not.
I do believe you, sir.
By heaven, it is not. That's enough. Mary, I would not thou shouldst utter it to any living creature. Yet I care not. Well, I must hence, Piso. Conceive thus much. No ordinary person could have drawn so deep a secret from me. I mean not this, but that I have to tell thee. This is nothing, this. Piso, remember, silence, buried here. No greater hell than to be slave to fear.
And exit Thorello.
Piso, remember silence, buried here. When should this flow of passion trail take head? Faith, I'll dream no longer of this running humour. For fear I seek, the violence of the stream hath already hath transported me so far that I can feel no ground at all but soft.
And I'm going to pause there before the water bearer enters, because we'll run the end of this scene into the next scene. But I think we should just touch it base on Thorello and this scene, because it's interesting. I sort of get the game of the scene, of this sort of constant back and forth and vacillation of things, but I'm not really sure what is actually happening. It's really interesting, and he's very fond of Piso, but can he trust Piso? Because we had that established earlier, very briefly. So all sorts of questions about what's going on here. I'll go to Elizabeth and Eric, then Alan.
There's all this discussion of the secret, and it kind of hypes it up, but I didn't actually find where Thorello actually tells Piso the secret.
It's there's an awful lot of stuff, and it's very confusing, and it's not marked where the assigns are living, though they were mostly very well navigated, actually. Eric, then Alan, then Lois.
I was going to say it's an interesting sequence because it's sort of that thing that we've seen in other plays where, like with the romance, especially, where it's like, no, go, oh, come back, stay, go, come back. It's very much push me, pull you. And we've only seen that with lovers, as far as I remember. We've never seen it in this kind of situation, which is kind of, I don't know, it's just sort of very interesting about the relationship between Piso and Thorello.
Yeah, I mean, we may be reading more into it than the author intended, but there is a relationship that here going on, and you're right. I say that's the game. That this push pull relationship is what this scene is sort of structured around. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to highlight the fact that an awful lot of Thorello's stuff is asides, and as to the secret, no, he's not actually tipped his hand. He used to be indecisive. Now he's just not so sure about it.
Lois, then Helen.
No, I think in fact it can be made clear. I mean, the thing he's been terrified of and has talked about in two previous scenes is that while he's away, some man, any man, one of Prospero's friends or Prospero himself or somebody might seduce his wife, who seems to be very fond of him and has no intention of committing adultery with anybody as far as we can see. But he's desperate, and he's desperate to get Piso to spy on her and just make sure that nothing happens while these people are in the house. But he's also aware that jealous men are funny, and he doesn't like to reveal to anybody just how appallingly jealous he is. So he goes back and forth all through this scene, both about can he trust Piso, and then can he trust Piso if Piso doesn't swear? And then if Piso does swear, does that make it worse? And is the oath valid anyway? And then he finally says something. Then he tells him, no, that wasn't the thing. The big secret is the one I'm going to tell you some other time, because he's still so ashamed of feeling like this. I mean, this is the part that David Garrick played in the 18th century when they revived it. You can see why, because he was famous for his transitions, and this is all just transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing of, obviously, we last saw Thorello yesterday, and we've sort of forgotten where he was at, and where the plot is at. Though there's still part of me thinking that you're just a few words or two extra to just remind us what is going on. In an aside, he doesn't have to tell Piso, but it'd be nice if he just clearly explicated to the audience what is actually going on, because, that might be an issue. Helen.
The bit I loved was that, having decided he didn't want an oath, he then receives one, a perfectly good oath, a strong oath. And then he said, I've got an oath. Hang on, I'm not sure if it's a legal oath. Better find a lawyer. And the rest of the time, instead of saying, I'm afraid to tell my secret, it's, no, I can't tell the secret till I've consulted a lawyer on whether that was a good oath or not. And he's using that to himself as his excuse.
Yeah, has he got a cast iron NDA? Rachael.
Yeah, that's what he wants, an NDA.
I mean, he's talking about the clock and his brother coming and stuff like that. I wonder if it's not, even if it's not in the dialogue, if his wife is then around and he doesn't want her to hear that he wants to spy on her, and that's why he's pulling Piso around, because I think they are moving around the stage, and there might be some wonderful physical comedy business of him like, come over here and I'll tell you, no, not over here, but over here, come here, go out, go in, like all this stuff. And then eventually he gets caught up in, well, will he actually keep my secret? And then he just runs off.
And, because he's a busy man, he's got business dealings to deal with, which means he needs to disappear. He can't stay in the house all the time. He's got to get somebody else to do the job, which leads us to that slightly awkward bit of anti-Semitism that just pops in randomly and probably gets cut very, very quickly. But hopefully doesn't interfere with any other element of the text. Eric?
What I found interesting was right at the beginning when Thorello's doing the soliloquy about, sort of counting time and all that stuff. It seems like he's very aggressively introverted. Like you could play it that way of like, I don't like people, but I have to go and do things. But then obviously, if he uses the jealous man motivation, it heightens that as well. Like I don't want her to meet other people because there's sort of it's this possessiveness matched with like introvertedness, which is just an interesting mix.
Anyway, we're still mid-scene, and I say we're going to run this into what's technically scene 2, as it all sort of flows into itself, as it were. So we've had Thorello's exited. Piso is sort of mid-sentence. Just to give Piso a second to cue themselves in, and that we have the entrance of Cobb, our water bearer.
Oh, it's our water bearer. Somewhat has crossed him now.
Fasting days. What tell you me of your fasting days? Would they were all on a light fire for me. They say the world shall be consumed with fire and brimstone in the latter day. But I would we had these embers weeks and these villainous Fridays burnt in the meantime. And then...
Why, how now, Cobb? What moves thee to a collar, huh?
Collar, sir? Swoons, I scorn your collar. I, sir, am no collier's horse. Sir, never ride me with your collar. And you do. I'll shew you a jade's trick.
Oh, you'll slip your head out of your collar. Why, Cobb, you mistake me.
Nay, I have my room, and I be angry as well as another, sir.
Thy room? Thy humour, man, thou mistakest.
Humour? Mac, I think it be so indeed. What is this humour? It's some rare thing, I warrant.
Marry, I'll tell thee what it is, as 'tis generally received in these days. It is a monster bred in man by self-love and affectation, and fed by folly.
How? Must it be fed?
Oh, aye, humour is nothing if it is not fed. Why, didst thou never hear of that? It's a common phrase, feed my humour.
I'll none on it. Humour, avaunt. I know you not. Be gone. Let who will make hungry meals for you. It shall not be I. Feed you, quoth he. 'Sblood. I have much ado to feed myself, especially on these lean rascal days too. And it had been any other day but a fasting day. A plague on them all for me. By this light, one might have done God good service and have drowned them all in the flood 200,000 or 300,000 years ago. Oh, I do stomach them hugely. I have a more now, and it were for Sir Bevis's horse.
Nay, but I pray thee, Cobb, what makes thee so out of love with fasting days?
Marry, that will make any man out of love with them, I think. They're bad conditions, and you will needs know. First, they are of a Flemish breed, I am sure on it, for they raven up more butter than all the days of the week beside. Next, they stink of fish miserably. Thirdly, they'll keep a man devoutly hungry all day, and at night send him supperless to bed.
Indeed, these are false, Cobb.
Nay, and this were all. 'Twere something, but they are the only known enemies to my generation. A fasting day no sooner comes, but my lineage goes to rack. Poor Cobbs, they smoke for it, they melt in passion, and your maids too know this, and yet would have me turn Hannibal, and eat my own fish and blood, my princely cause.
And stage direction pulls out a red herring.
Fear nothing, I have not the heart to devour you, and I might be made as rich as Goliath. Oh, that I had room for my tears, I could weep salt water enough now to preserve the lives of 10,000 of my kin. But I may curse none but these filthy almanacs, for an 'twere not for them, these days of persecution would ne'er be known. I'll be hanged, and some fishmonger's son do not make on them, and puts in more fasting days than he should do, because he would utter his father's dried stockfish.
So, peace, thou shalt be beaten like a stockfish else. Here is Signor Matheo.
And we have a whole host of people entering. Matheo, Prospero, Lorenzo Jr., Bobadilla, Stephano, Musco.
Now must I look out for a messenger to my master.
And exit Cobb and Piso as we effectively move into scene 2.
Beshrew me, but it was an absolute good jest and exceedingly well carried.
Our ignorance maintained it as well, did it not?
Yes, faith, but was't possible thou shouldst not know him?
For God, not I, and I might have been joined pattern with one of the 9 worthies for knowing him. Spludman, he had so writhen himself into the habit of one of your disparviews here, your decayed, ruinous, worm-eaten gentlemen of the round, such as have vowed to sit on the skirts of the city. Let your provost and his half dozen of halberdiers do what they can, and have translated begging out of the old hackney pace to a fine easy amble, and made it run as smooth off the tongue as a shoved groat shilling into the likeness of one of these lean purgos. Had he molded himself so perfectly, observing every trick of their action as varying the accent, swearing with an emphasis, indeed, all with so special and exquisite a grace, that hast thou seen him, thou wouldst have sworn he might have been the Tamburlaine or the Agamemnon on the route.
Why, Musco, who would have thought thou hadst been such a gallant?
I cannot tell, but unless a man had juggled begging all his lifetime and been a weaver of phrases from his infancy for the appareling of it, I think the world cannot produce his rival.
Where goest thou this coat, Imoral?
Faith, sir, I had it of one of the devil's near kinsmen, a broker.
That cannot be, if the proverb hold. A crafty knave needs no broker.
True, sir, but I need a broker. Ergo, no crafty knave.
Well put off, well put off.
But he has more of these shifts.
And yet, where I have 1, the broker has 10, sir.
And enter Piso.
Francisco, Martino, ne'er one to be found now. What a spite's this?
How now, Piso? Is my brother within?
No, sir, my master went forth e'en now, but Signor Giuliano is within. Cobb! Cobb! Is he gone too?
Whither went thy master? Piso, canst thou tell?
I know not. To Dr. Clements, I think, sir. Cobb?
And exit Piso.
Dr. Clement, what's he? I've heard much speech of him.
Why, dost thou not know him? He is the gonfalonier of the state here, an excellent, rare civilian, and a great scholar, but the only mad, merry old fellow in Europe. I showed him you the other day.
Oh, I remember him now. Good faith, and he hath a very strange presence, methinks. It shews as if he stood out of the rank from other men. I have heard many of his jests in Padua. They say he will commit a man for taking the wool of his horse.
Aye, for wearing his cloak on one shoulder, or anything indeed, if it come in the way of his humour.
Gaspar, Martino, Cobb! So, where should they be, Trow?
Says Piso as he enters.
Signor Thorello's man, I pray thee vouchsafe us the lighting of this match.
Pox on your match, no time but now to vouchsafe. Francisco! Cobb!
Exit Piso again.
Body of me, here's the remainder of £7, since yesterday was 7 night. It's your right, Trinidado. Did you never take any, Signor?
No, truly, sir. But I'll learn to take it now, since you commend it so.
Signor, believe me, upon my relation, for what I tell you, the world shall not improve. I have been in the Indies, where this herb grows, where neither myself nor a dozen gentlemen more of my knowledge have received the taste of any other nutriment in the world, for the space of 21 weeks, but tobacco only. Therefore it cannot be, but 'tis most divine. Further, take it in the nature, in the true kind, so it makes an antidote, that had you taken the most deadly poisonous simple in all Florence, it should expel it, and clarify you with as much ease as I speak. And for your green wound, your balsamum and your are all mere gulleries and trash to it, especially your Trinidado. Your Nicotian is good too. I could say what I know of the virtue of it, for the exposing of rheums, raw humours, crudities, obstructions, with 1,000 of this kind, but I profess myself no quacksalver. Only thus much, by Hercules, I do hold it, and will affirm it, before any prince in Europe, to be the most sovereign and precious herb that ever the earth tendered to the use of man.
Oh, this speech would have done rare in an apothecary's mouth.
Re-enter Piso and Cobb.
Aye, close by St. Anthony's, Dr. Clements.
Oh!
Where's the match I gave thee?
His blood would be his match, and he and pipe and all were at Sancto Domingo.
Exit Piso.
By God's dames, I marvel what pleasure or felicity they have in taking this roguish tobacco. It's good for nothing but to choke a man and fill him full of smoke and embers. There were 4 died out of one house last week with taking of it, and 2 more the bell went for yesternight. One of them, they say, will ne'er escape it. He voided a bushel of soot yesterday, upward and downward, by the stocks, and there were no wiser men than I. I'd have it present death, man or woman, that should but deal with a tobacco pipe. Why, it will stifle them all in the end, as many as use it. It's little better than ratsbane.
Good
Signor.
Hold. You base cullion, you.
Sir, here's your match. Come, thou must needs be talking too.
Nay, he will not meddle with his match, I warrant you. Well, it shall be a dear beating, and I live.
Do you prate?
Nay, good signor, will you regard the humour of a fool? Away, knave.
Piso, get him away.
And exit Piso and Cobb.
A whoreson filthy slave, a turd, an excrement, body of Caesar, but that I scorn to let forth so mean a spirit, I'd have stabbed him to the earth.
Mary, God forbid, sir.
By this fair heaven, I would have done it.
Oh, he swears admirably by this fair heaven. Body of Caesar, I shall never do it, sure, upon my salvation. No, I've not the right grace.
Signor, will you any? By this air, the most divine tobacco as ever I drunk.
I thank you, sir.
Oh, this gentleman doth it rarely too, but nothing like the other. By this air, I am as a gentleman. By Phoebus.
Exit Bobadilla and Matheo.
Sir, glance. Signor Prospero.
As I have a soul to be saved, I do protest.
That you are a fool.
Cousin, will you any tobacco?
Aye, sir, upon my salvation.
How now, cousin?
I protest, as I am a gentleman, but no soldier indeed.
No, signor. As I remember, you served on a great force, last general muster.
Aye, sir, that's true. Cousin, may I swear as I am a soldier by that?
Oh, yes, that you may.
Then, as I am a gentleman and a soldier, it is divine tobacco.
But soft. Where's Signor Matheo? Gone?
No, sir, they went in here.
Oh, let's follow them. Signor Matheo is gone to salute his mistress, Sirrah. Now thou shalt hear some of his verses, for he never comes hither without some shreds of poetry. Come, Signor Stephano, Musco.
Musco? Where? Is this Musco?
Aye, but peace, cousin, no words of it at any hand.
Not I, but this fair heaven, as I have a soul to be saved by Phoebus.
Oh, rare. Your cousin's discourse is simply suited all in oaths.
Aye, he lacks nothing but a little light stuff to draw them out withal, and he were rarely fitted to the time. Fitted for the time.
And they exit. Quite a lot going on here. Not least popular discourse on the efficacy or disadvantages of smoking. The in thing that all the cool kids are doing. Do not smoke. Yes, we do not. We obviously follow Cobb's opinion here as a group. Obviously, at the time, they didn't know the unknown disadvantages, but they did know the known disadvantages. Cobb obviously thought it was a filthy habit, whereas Bobadilla goes on at great length. Presumably because he's sponsored by a major tobacco company. So, yeah, we've got, again, lots of business, lots of stuff going on. We've got this constant popping in and out of Piso in this sort of section of the scene. And then, of course, we've got this section before that with Cobb and Piso. And yeah, I think there's a couple of things I want to bring up, but I'll see what the room brings out as well. But yeah, it was mentioned, I think Alan said in the chat, it was just that question, is a red herring meaning then what it means to us today? What is the, is it just any old fish, or does it actually have that meaning that we have that we see in so many murder mysteries? I don't know the answer to this question. I genuinely don't. I'm quite curious as to the signification of this red herring that is pulled out at this moment. Other thoughts in the room as well? Who wants to leap in? Lots of things in my mind. Eric.
Yeah, I was like, is he going to sacrifice his ancestors, sort of cousin on the fire because he's hungry? Because we had this elaborate sort of, we had this elaborate scene yesterday about, he's kind of, oh yes, my name was Cobb Herring, and at the beginning of the world, Adam and Eve fed upon the, so on and so forth. Yeah.
There's this great lineage, and yes, is he going to be forced to commit cannibalism? Lois.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I wonder, I don't know, because he's a water carrier, he does actually probably have water with him, so he could conceivably pull out this live wriggling fish and address it. It's all right. I'm not going to eat you. I don't know, just to add to the general goofiness of this thing.
Oh, I like that. Yes. Briony, then Rachael, then Helen. Were you not waving?
I was just, holding my hands in a weird gesticulation.
Cool. Rachael, then Helen.
Never mind. I'll post it in the chat.
Okay, the viewers at home will all be desperately excited to know what we're keeping from them. Helen.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard red herring used the way we use red herring now. But certainly the fast days necessitated a big fish industry, which was largely, which was entirely composed of either dried or salted fish. And so there were no live herrings because there was no way of keeping them fresh. They would be stinking before they got to be being consumed. So we're talking always of dried and salted.
Lynn. Then Lois.
So, fish are funny, evidently. I mean, fish are still funny. You're going to cut down the largest tree in the forest with a herring. That scene from my life. It's hilarious. Why is that so funny? I don't know, but it's so funny. And the sardines and noises off. That's so funny. Fish are funny. Can't explain it.
No, one of life's great mysteries. Lois.
Yeah, I just looked it up actually in Wikipedia, and apparently the term was popularized in the early 19th century by William Cobbett, who tells a story about somebody using a red herring to divert hounds from chasing something. So they go after it. That would make sense. I mean, the the smell would attract somebody.
That's what it is.
So yeah, it's just a prop note. It's not. It has no additional significance, which is fine. I love the term "eat my own fish and blood," which is just such really deft wordplay. It's not hitting us over the head with things. Alan.
He also mentions cannibalism.
Yeah.
There's some really nice stuff. It's a nice stuff in what is ostensibly feels like padding. I'm not sure that this scene is actually technically adds anything apart from again a bridge between sequences. But there's some really good stuff in it. Not least because the play starts defining humours again, so we have this Piso definition. It is a monster bred in a man by self-love and affectation and fed by folly. Humour is nothing if it be not fed. Again, the play is giving us definitions by what it means by humours, and hence the fact that I'm not defining it too stringently for the room, because I want the play to do it, and other plays will do it as well. Lois, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, and it's being fed all the time in this case. I mean, Lorenzo and Prospero are feeding it in one way. I mean, just encouraging Stephano to go on. But Stephano doesn't need much encouragement. I mean, he picks up everything that he thinks is fashionable from everybody, especially all these oaths. I mean, that gets really funny. It's a kind of running gag as he adds more and more of them to his speech.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think Cobb got a bit of a bad rap here, because maybe I'm biased because I was playing him, but I think I like the fact that he was right about so many of the things he said, and I liked his discussion about fasting, because I think fasting has changed its meaning now than it was then. I think fasting was like a prerequisite, especially at times like Lent. And then I was also thinking about the play in Act 3, if we've changed gears. I'm not so sure if we've returned to the fast pace of Act 1, but something has definitely changed in Act 3.
Well, the Avengers have assembled in the end of the last act. You do get a sense of characters starting to come together now. Even if they haven't necessarily done very much, we've got this continuation of these people have all sort of returned. There's bustle. We got Piso popping in and out like a pop gun. This whole thing about the match and tobacco there's a more liveliness to what's going on here. Lois.
Yeah, I think there is a kind of momentum that we're sort of aware of. I mean, Kitely, I think somehow or other Kitely's anxiety, nervousness, and so on has projected itself into Piso, and he's running madly around trying to find somebody to send as a messenger to Kitely to tell him that there are an awful lot of men in the house, and that's absolutely crucial. I mean, this is building up because sometime or other Kitely is going to return, presumably, and be ballistic when he sees what's going on. I think that's part of it. Meanwhile, we've
translate, please.
Yes.
Thorello. Oh God, sorry. Yes. Yeah. Wrong play. Wrong version. Yeah. Thorello. And and there's also this violence. Bobadilla is furious when Cobb comes out with all this anti-tobacco stuff. So they have to pull him off him. There is actually an enormous amount of violence, and even more probably on the way.
There's a lot of bustle. There's a lot of business. It's a really busy scene. In fact, we kind of don't have too much time to sort of dissect it too much further. But yeah, any additional thoughts about what's going on with Bobadilla and Cobb in this more opens, and Stephano as well. Stephano's. Lois was talking about these additional oaths, and that's the length of his discourse. He just collects catchphrases. That's all he can do. That's his level. And I've never met anyone like that in the world who don't just pick up the most popular thing from the comedy shows of the time to be repeated endlessly. Never met anyone like that in the real world ever. No. Other thoughts before we go into final thoughts about the play overall? No. we've got to that stage. Okay, so we're about halfway through, near enough. This is the point in the play where we would, for a modern production, start hunting for where we would put an interval. As well as also, are there, lengthy or small or shorter elements that need thinking about? Well, we have to cut somewhere, almost certainly. I mean, you could do the whole text. You could. It is doable, but I'm not going to recommend that. But also, just what are we enjoying? What we liking? I'm still really enjoying this. It's just there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. Final thoughts from the room. Anyone wants to throw anything in? I'll go to Rachael first. Rachael, do you have any final thoughts?
It's still hard to kind of make out so far because Jonson is doing so much different stuff from what I've read with you guys before from other people. Part of him's a little bitter like Marston, and he's got a real good sense of language and of form. Also, just all these, there's so much like lad-ish behavior going on, like so much, you know what I mean? Like young guys going around just looking to have a good time. That's what it seems like. They're on it's like, not the Parnassus play, but how Parnassus was like a journey. They're on a journey, but not to go to Parnassus, but just to, I don't know, go to the pub or something and make people along the way.
Yeah, it's today we'd probably call it a slice of life play. There is a sense that there's this world and we're just meeting characters and they're flying past, and the production's job is to keep all this up in the air and to keep it present and keep it entertaining. Almost on a moment-by-moment basis, because you're not following a plot that's extensive enough that you're going, I want to know what happens next. It's more, how will this sequence end? Is the next bit going to be as entertaining? That's a technically really tricky job. You have to be absolutely on point to make that work. If that isn't to say you can't make it work or it isn't effective. But yeah, it's a structurally very, very difficult way to build a production, which again builds on Lois's point from the other day about if Jonson was very involved in the detail of how these things should be staged, there's a reason for that. Otherwise, the play dies. And as we go into at the end of the 1590s, into the 17th century, that question about how detailed productions get, you get impression of a lot of the plays we've done before is learn your lines, throw it on stage, it'll be fine. And increasingly we're getting plays where that kind of punk attitude may be shifting, though we've got to be careful about applying narratives over things and things. But there does seem to be a really interesting shift in playwriting that's happening now. Elizabeth, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I really agree with you, Rachael, and I really agree with you, Rob. I think that what the play's doing is that it's setting itself up for, I feel, because I'm not familiar with the text, an unknown conclusion. I feel like it's setting up, Jonson's kind of setting us up, taking us down the garden path, and he's taking us somewhere, but I'm not sure exactly where. So I'm excited for tomorrow, and we're going to do it one more session as well. But I found that even though the text is quite long, it's not tedious. I don't know if anyone else found that this as well. Like, I felt it was a long text, but I could stomach it because we were talking about productions of the text that people have seen that were really long, and I thought to myself that you could get away with it.
It's just that technical challenge. Absolutely. Briony, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with what's been said already, and I think considering it's like you said, a slice of life play, it's very, very relatable still. There's a lot of stuff that feels a lot more modern than it is, but also this it's not, it's so much more real to a lot of the stuff that we've read around the same time, where it's almost like lofty theatre. It's like it has to involve gods or something. It has to be more aspirational, whereas this, like you say, because it's like a slice of life, it's lads, it's got all these elements that just feel quite real and still relatable now.
Yeah, because it's not like we're feeling like the characters need to be likable all the time, or you know, there is a sort of permission that this text has for people to do slightly unpleasant things, and for the most part, they're only just being a bit, you know, rakish. They're not doing anything awful, so that helps. You know, that sense. I think it was Lois was, or someone was saying this the other day about, you know, just you know, we're expected to see in this kind of comedy that people will do bad things because they're an example and we should laugh at them. That might have been Lynn. I can't remember. If it was Lynn, I go to Lynn now. Final thoughts.
Yeah, what I have been thinking about this play is that, you know, there's really barely a character in here that we don't already recognize. I mean, these are all at least drawing on very familiar types. We've got the clever servant. We've got the miserly old man. We've Lorenzo Senior. We've got the rakish young man. We've got the braggart soldier. This is all stuff straight from classic comedy, yet somehow this play manages to make them really fresh and really, as Brian was saying, relatable. You know, Rob was saying, "Oh, I've never met anybody like that." Only I have. And that slice of life feel it has, even though almost every single character is somebody that's a theatrical type to some extent. And I think that and I don't know how he does that. I don't know actually. I don't know what to make of that, how that effect is achieved, but really that's really quite an achievement for a text to feel this fresh and this gritty and this slice of lifey using characters we've all seen before.
Lois, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that type of adaptation of classical comedy was already happening, I suppose, with the Italian dramatists. I mean, Bugbears was an example. And yeah, you get the same sort of thing. I mean, the clever servant who's basically on the side of the young man. But of course, in a way, that's a new motivation. I mean, the clever servant in Plautus was mainly after getting his freedom, or at least he often got it at the end of the play. And you obviously can't have that because he's a servant rather than a slave in this play. But yeah, I think it's a brilliant job of you know, putting new life into all these old types and interweaving their stories. I mean, in a sense, every character is also a bit like a little wind-up toy. You know, you wind it up and it goes off and it does its thing and it just keeps doing it for 5 acts. And what's fun is to watch them and how they collide with each other sometimes and go around each other and so on.
And it does feel like a play by someone at the beginning of their career as well. It feels like someone who's come in, who's got, you know, and he's splurged all this stuff onto the page, and it's just like there's too much of it, but it's all great, and yeah. You know, maybe he'll learn. Helen, any final thoughts?
Yeah, over half a century ago, I studied this for A-level in the London version. And I came to it thinking, I can't remember a single word of it. And do you know, having got this far with the Italian version, I still can't remember a word of it. I don't know what this says about me, the play, or Jonson. But I must say, I am liking it more than I remember I did. It may be because I'm better with the period and with other plays and I know what's going on, but and I liked it a lot more today than I did yesterday. So as far as I'm concerned, this is on the way up.
Excellent. Alan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting a good series of vignettes, a lot of nice little scenes. I'm not overall seeing where the overall thing has an arc of plot, if indeed it does have. That we probably won't find out until we get to the bitter end on Friday. The one thought that's occurred to me is I wonder whether there is actually Musco as an everyman character, because he's the one person who possibly interacts more with the audience than anybody else that we've seen so far. We've had 2 or 3 pieces where he's been doing chunks of material which are obviously directed at the crowd rather than directed at other people on stage. And I wonder whether that's following on from the earlier everyman tradition within earlier theatre.
I suspect not. I suspect you're contracting 2 separate words, every man, with a character called every man. I don't think that's what the intention of the play is. I don't know if Lois has a thought on that.
Yeah. No, I mean, in Roman comedy, it usually is the clever slave who does a lot of the talking to the audience. And I think he's generally the one at the end who says something like, don't wait around for them to come out of the feast because they're going to be in there for some time. I suggest you go home, things like that.
And just talking about that the detachable nature of the vignettes, I've done quite a lot of this play in separate short scenes over the course of my career. Certainly the tobacco scene discussion, as it works incredibly well in its own right. People quite enjoy that for reasons I cannot fathom. And that is that other element of this, is that it's just chock full of stuff that's just so good and so repeatable. And works it outside of context, because people, as Briony was saying and others have echoed, are we recognise these people. We've met them, even if the words are slightly different. The energy is the same. Eric, any final thoughts?
It's an interesting play, just like what it's doing, kind of putting all these ambiguous and ambiguous in terms of not morally clear characters on stage. And I just find it interesting that Cobb, it's so tempting to feel sorry for him, just because the whole herring stuff, and fasting, and you can kind of imagine that people would react to fasting in that way, sort of start working all day and having to eat nothing but eat no meat and stuff and that kind of I'm enjoying what this play is doing, though I don't approve of the tactics of Lorenzo Jr. and Prospero. And I'm curious to see where it's going, because obviously, we've had the sort of gathering of the, round table. What do you want to call it? The Avengers. But yeah, it's kind of interesting in that way.
Yes, it's government of all the talents here has been assembled. And I just to echo back, going Elizabeth's point about Cobb getting the rough end of the stick. I really like Cobb. I think Cobb speaks a lot of sense, even when he's not. He really works, and he's got some great lines as well. I really appreciate when clowns function. And they're not doing bad clowning; they're doing good, solid material, and I do like that. Lois?
Yeah, I mean, I think nearly everything he says actually makes quite a lot of sense. I think it was yesterday I meant to draw our attention to the fact that there's one scene where he just briefly appears, and then somebody says something to him, and he retorts with a very good one-liner and goes out again. He's just sort of there, he's in a lot of scenes, but often not for terribly long. The other thing, there was a bit in this that again cries out for stage business, and I'm not sure quite what, but there's a bit where Musco says to Lorenzo and Prospero, look, and I think that must mean that Stephano and Matheo and Bobadilla are all doing something. They may be taking tobacco in a particularly affected way, or I don't know what they're doing, but anyway, it's sufficiently funny that he wants them all just to look at it.
They're comparing vapors.
Has to do with smoke rings.
Yeah. All the things. Oh, Eric.
Yeah, on that note, if you wanted to update the play, you could just make it about vaping instead of.
It's the kit, and what flavors they've got, and all that stuff. Anyway, we must close the session there. We have, 2 more sessions to go. We're taking our time with this one. because there's so much to unpack. All that remains is to thank all the wonderful people for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
Feed my humour.